She's ready. Welcome, everybody, to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners work session, uh, October 11th, 2023. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll ask Mr. Laster to do a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Laster. First on our agenda is a review and approval of the agenda. Is there any addition or changes that would need to do to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to.
Move to approve.
Moved by Ross Connect.
Second.
Second by Laster to approve the agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We do have speaker request forms at the back of the room, and you can turn them into Holly. We do utilize the speaker request forms. I will say this is a work session. And let me kind of explain to some of the people out there in our audience, I've gotten a lot of speaker requests on the mining ordinance. Today, for a work session, what the commission is going to do is hear from the planning commission of asking for some directions of which way to go. There is no plan for, I've gotten several emails on moratoriums and all that type of stuff, but this is informational for the commission to be able to give planning department directions on what to do, or if what the commission would like to see done. It's not to take any action. I'll highly express anything that has to do with mining. We would give more of a notice and have more a special session just for that, because we know how important that is. So I just wanted to express that to some of the audience members. I do have like 4 speaker request forms on that want to speak to the mining ordinance. So I just want to express that to you. I don't know how some of this got out, that we were taking action on it. It's something that's been sitting on our books for a while, and the planning commission wants to know what the commission has some direction, whether to continue on with it or leave it, do nothing, whatever it is. But when we have that discussion, that's what it's all about. But I will give you guys, I was going to set it up to just do public comment after the work session, but I'll let the staff do the presentation on the mining ordinance. I'll let you give, you can speak on it, who put in the speaker request form, and then I'll go back to the staff so we can work on it and give direction. If commission's okay with that direction?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I think that's fine. I just think that public comment's still necessary in the process, that's all.
Yeah, I was going to wait until the end, but when the agenda comes up, I'll let you guys speak on that.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to clarify, this is a work session. That's a little bit different than a regular commission meeting where we're taking action. So with that, I'll start with Brittany. You're going to start with the hazardous mitigation plan update.
This is just an informational update for the commission. Brittany Molitor, Planning Director. We have been working with emergency management on the hazard mitigation plan update. It is for Pennington County, so there's a lot of other entities, cities that are involved in this update. There is a consultant that's working through this process. It's mainly through Dustin Willett's office. But as part of that, we wanted to segue into updating our floodplain ordinance because it has not been updated pretty much since it went into effect. It's very basic. There's not a lot of direction in it for the consultants or engineers or for homeowners on what types of criteria that we're looking for. Our current ordinance doesn't have any freeboard, which is what we consider, above the base flood elevation where things are built to. For insurance purposes, under the NFIP, the more freeboard you have, the lesser their insurance is. So there's some things that we're looking at. Some states have mandatory 2 feet. I think we were looking at a foot or a foot and a half proposal. There's some restrictions on floodway and what can be built in floodways. So as part of the hazard mitigation plan update, we are looking at updating our floodplain ordinance so we can get public comment at the same time. So it's kind of going to run at the same time during those public comment periods. So I just wanted to update the commission as to kind of what we are doing in our plan for that floodplain ordinance. It is very convoluted right now because our ordinance is so basic. So having some criteria to review as far as when we're looking at the different types of structures and things like that in different types of zones. So we do have quite a few structures and quite a few areas in the county that have floodplain. So it's a necessary update, I believe. So.
You guys are gonna work on that and bring it back to the commission?
Yes, we do have a proposed ordinance in place right now, a draft, but as part of that hazard mitigation update, as part of the public meetings, that's what we want to be able to present during that time. So it's kind of at the same time, so we don't have separate public meetings, because there's potentially quite a few changes. So it kind of goes in line with the hazard mitigation plan update, so.
Okay.
So if there was any questions.
So, anything else on?
No, it was
floodplain?
just a general update on, and I know that the commission, as part of those public meetings, will probably be involved in those hazard mitigation. So I just wanted the commission to be aware of some of those proposed changes.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ruskin.
Brittany, is there a timeline that we're trying to get this ordinance put together? And
The floodplain ordinance, I think the hazard mitigation plan has to be updated in the beginning of 2024. Because of the significant changes in it, that's why we wanted to work with Dustin and the EM group to do it at the same time, because I think it warrants some public comment and public meetings. So as part of that, that's why we decided to kind of do it at the same time.
thank you.
So next on our agenda is the Hard Rock mining ordinance, and I think what I'll do is I'll let you do the presentation on that so folks know when they want to speak up after this, what's happening instead.
I'll kind of here defer to Cody.
Okay.
Cody had worked on this spreadsheet. He did some research on some other entities that are in the area that has similar type of activities. And then so I'll.
And can you explain a little bit, Brittany, on why this is on our agenda today, and
Sure.
give us a
Staff,
little background?
we put together an ordinance, and it's pretty basic as far as what's allowed. We worked with our state's attorney's office and with the state and the AG's office on looking at what we can regulate under our ordinances. We worked with Lawrence County as well and looked at their ordinances. What we're looking for today is direction from this commission on how we want to proceed. Are there some things in the ordinance that you would like to see in the ordinance? Is the ordinance okay as it is? That's why Cody did some of this research to give you an idea of what other entities are doing in other areas that have similar types of mining activity.
And the commission could direct you to go back and do some more, well, it's no action today, but could give some directions.
Correct,
Basically
correct.
what you're looking for.
We're just looking for direction or areas that you would like us to research, where our authority lies in those areas and things like that.
Okay.
So Cody Sacker, environmental planner. So as Brittany said, we did some research into what other entities with larger mining areas such as like Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, to see what their county's ordinances required and then what their state required. So I don't know if you want me to go through every single one of these or if there's specific questions you have on them. The topics that we picked seem to be the topics that came up most from public comment, which were groundwater testing and monitoring, setbacks to water, setbacks to property lines, setbacks to residential structures, socioeconomic impact studies, and endangered species. So I can go through each one of the counties and states if you'd like me to, or how would you like me to do that?
I think you should highlight the big changes,
Okay, so
the hot topics.
we'll go through. So for permit type, a lot of them require a permit, but several of the counties there's a actual mining zoning where if it's allowed in that zoning district, you have to follow state requirements for it, but it's allowed in that zoning district without a permit. The next is groundwater testing and monitoring. Some required monitoring to prior to, and then obviously during the mining operation as well. But there was quite a few that didn't require anything, or they said that you had to follow state law. And for instance, the state of South Dakota requires baseline testing, either quarterly or yearly, depending on what the state allows. The annual report requires sufficient data to demonstrate groundwater restoration and requires site monitoring plan for groundwater. So that's one thing that people want added to our zoning ordinance, but we don't feel it's necessary because the state of South Dakota already does it. They have it covered. Even if we were to get that information, if anything was wrong with that information, we would forward it to the state and the state would handle it because it's against their state statute. So we don't feel the necessity to have that in there. The next is setback to water. Gunnison County in Colorado required a setback of 500 feet, but other than that, most of them didn't require anything, or they said that you had to comply with local, state, and federal laws. The state of South Dakota, I couldn't find where they have anything, and we don't have it in our ordinance either. For setback to property lines, it varied. Some didn't require it. Some were 30 feet, some were 50 feet. Some were 0 to 50 depending on zoning. Some were 150 to 250 feet depending on situations. We currently have it at 50 feet. That was per the planning commission. We did have it at 300 feet, but the planning commission thought that was too much and they wanted to mimic 320, which is our aggregate mining ordinance, which requires 50. For setbacks to residential structures, a lot of them don't have it. Some are 50 feet unless you have consent of the adjacent landowner, then you can go closer. Others depended on zoning. Some are 100 feet. State of South Dakota doesn't require it. We currently require 300 feet from residential structures, so that is covered in our ordinance. Socioeconomic impact study, I couldn't find anywhere where any county required a socioeconomic impact study. Some deferred to the state. For instance, the state of South Dakota, if the Board of Minerals and Mining requires the socioeconomic impact study, the operation would have to do a socioeconomic impact study. So we don't have it in our ordinance because, again, that's covered by the state. So if the state feels it's a necessity to have that, the state would require it. And then endangered species, there was no, in the counties that I did research in, there were nothing that mentioned endangered species. A lot of them, when you went to the state, said that you had talked about endangered species and federal. It's the same way with the state of South Dakota. It requires a preliminary wildlife survey by the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. For example, I went to an F3 meeting at the Forest Service 4 or 5 years ago about what they were going to do. The Game Fish and Parks was there. They were talking about bighorn sheep and other species in the area and what the impact was on that. So the state already handles that as well. So again, we didn't feel it was a necessity to have in our ordinance because it's already covered by the state agency. So that's really the gist of this spreadsheet. And really what we're looking for is, with this information, what do you want us to put in the ordinance? What do you want to change with when it comes to like these 3 major, or these 4 or 5 major sticking points?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Drews.
just a question, Cody. So in this, we're talking about actual mining. We're not talking about exploration.
No, so exploration is covered by the state of South Dakota. For, when it comes to what we require for exploration, if it goes over 10,000 square feet of disturbance, then we require a stormwater permit. But we don't have a permit for exploration because it's covered by the state of South Dakota.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roskinek?
Okay, so we don't have that for exploratory drilling, but could we? And the reason I mention that, Cody, is because the one over by Hill City, if I've got my information correct, they're talking about drilling 50 holes. I might be off a little bit, in the neighborhood of 800 to 900 feet. And to me, even if it's a hole, there's a chance that you could get into the drinking water supply for the city of Hill City. I mean, and to me, I think that there should be some kind of a mechanism going forward just to make sure that we don't jeopardize the Hill City's water supply, because not only does the community of Hill City use that, but in the summer that population probably quadruples. And we know that Hill City thrives on tourism. I'd hate to sit there and jeopardize the drinking water quality for the people of Hill City, let alone their primary industry.
Yeah. So whether or not we could require it, that'd be a question maybe for Brittany. I do know that they do have to get a state permit for exploration, so it's not like they're just out there drilling and it's not monitored. So according to Codified Law 4564, it says no governmental office or any political subdivision of the state has the authority to require or issue a permit or require any surety for exploration operations.
I guess my question is, some of these say we just follow the state, and that's fine, but my question is, if we deem to do something a little more strict because of a sensitive area, could we do that?
That would probably be a question for our state's attorney, because we've been told by our state's attorney in the AG's office, no.
It's my understanding you can't be more lenient, but you do have the option to be more strict in situations that might warrant that.
Again, we've been directed by our state's attorney that we can't be, and if the board, I guess, wants to go that direction, that'd be up to the board. But when us as staff are directed by our state's attorney not to do something, we're not going to do it because it opens us up for litigation. So we're not going to put it in there. If the board wishes to, that'd be the decision of the board.
Thank you.
Finished. Ms. Hadcock?
So when you do exploratory, how are they damaging the water?
I'm honestly not 100% sure on that. Anytime you drill, there's a chance of contaminating groundwater. But again, that's done by the state. It's monitored by the state. So I know people don't. We've heard from people from the public that say the state doesn't do anything, but I have no evidence of that.
Well, we went up there with Quinn and some of the other people, some of the constituents as well, and they were doing exploratory for one of the mining companies, and we had Vargo with us then. So I guess I didn't see the harm of the exploratory. I see the harm that people don't want it done very easily because they don't want mining at all. But I'm not seeing the harm of what exploratory does until it becomes full-fledged mining, and that takes up 10 to 20 years before that even happens, so.
Mr. Chair.
I just want to clarify that we're talking about the ordinance and exploratory. I think you explained by state law, we don't oversee that. So we're talking about the direction the commission would like to go with this ordinance of the mining ordinance. So I just wanted to clarify that. I think the question was asked, do we have that authority? And I think you answered it with the legal from the state. So I just wanted to clarify.
And then I guess I'd like to clarify one thing too, because I've gotten some emails. Lithium mining is covered under 320. It's a pegmatite material, so it's considered aggregate by the state of South Dakota. So it's already under our 320 ordinance.
320.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Laster.
I just asked, I was looking for the codified law. What was it again?
Sorry, Brittany took it from me.
564.
45
64.
6C-4.
There you go. That's what I didn't get, because when I looked up 64, I wasn't finding. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further questions for Cody? With that, Cody, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the public comment, and so that they know, they understand what we're talking about right now. It's not exploratory. What we're talking about is, do we want to add some more stuff to this ordinance, or give you direction to draft something, bring it back with some changes or not? That's something the commission will talk about after we get the public comment. So we'll have you come back up after public comment.
Mr. Chair.
Chairman, just a question.
Oh, I got Mr. Drews.
Sorry.
I have a question going back on the public notice. I don't know when you want to do that, but
The public notice.
public notice that's proposed in here. Want me to
Number
ask the
6.
question,
Yeah,
Cody,
go ahead and
now?
ask the question.
Cody?
Comment.
Going back on the public notice on point 2, it talks about the planning office notifying the applicant when the property owner list and the letters have been developed. And then what it does is it puts the applicant responsible for mailing out a certified mail with a copy of the planning office letter with return receipt requested. And it would just appear to me in reading this that this is maybe more appropriately done by the planning office itself. Probably needs to be a charge for it, but
To send the letters.
yeah.
I guess that's something we could discuss. Generally with requests at like conditional use for other conditional use permits and other things. The fee for the mailing list is $20 because they mail it out. But I'm guessing if that's the board's direction, we'd have to figure out how much the mailing fee is for certified return receipts and add it to the cost. It'll vary. It's not a straight number because you might have 50 letters on one request and 75 on the other. So we'd have to figure out a way to do that, but I would assume we could do that.
It just seems to me that if you're giving them a letter to put in, and they're to mail it certified, that there's really no security as to what is going in that certified envelope. I mean, there could be additional information that's put in there that's not really approved by us or our office. So I'm just concerned about, keeping it legitimate. So it's just simply what the letter is that we've drafted that's scheduled to go.
Yeah, that's something we can discuss.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Hadcock.
Yeah, just a question. If we're talking about on B, Hard Rock Mining, 320 is under not Hard Rock Mining, if they're talking about lithium today, right?
No, they were just clarifying. I got some speaker requests that want to talk about lithium, and lithium's under 320, so we're not.
So we're doing it on other items for consideration. 320
If that's what somebody wants to speak about under,
on
Public
lithium? Okay.
yeah, they can.
Just so the public knows, that's why I'm saying that, not for my information, so the public knows that you're not speaking on Hard Rock Mining for lithium on item B, you're doing it on item 6.
Because I do have one speaker request form that says lithium mining moratorium, and that would be 320. And that probably wouldn't be appropriate for underneath this.
Yeah.
Under this one. So I'd probably ask that one to, but I think everybody has a clear picture of what we're talking about today. Now, we're not talking about 320, we're not talking about lithium, we're talking about the hard rock mining ordinance. As was presented by Cody just now, the commission could give some direction, so, for the speakers coming up, if you want to make a long speech on mining, I would highly tell you that that's not probably, today's not the day to do it. If you have something specific you'd like us to consider, please make that notice so we can write it down, and when we call Cody back up and we have our discussions between the commissioners for the work session, we could bring those up or not bring them up.
But the point is on Hard Rock Mining, they'd speak on B, on other for 320, it'd be item E. or other,
yeah,
or
other
for
items
considerations.
for consideration. So, William, Wagner, are you okay if I move you down to others?
What's that?
Are you okay if I move you so you can speak under other items, which would be lithium?
I think it falls under all of them, under all the mining.
Okay, I'll just take them, I'll take it, we're getting confused. We'll just take them all up
All right.
right now, so.
Cody, and what's her name, ma'am? Brittany. Okay, nice to meet y'all. Good morning. Might want to write these down to go with the ordinance.
Okay, so what William, let me get you up here. So now that you know what we're taking up, I'd like to have people stick to what's on our agenda, which is the hard rock mining. Do you have recommendations for it? What would you like?
I remember a little bit of law.
Okay,
Actually, under WOTUS, Waters of the United States, all intermediate and permanent creeks are protected. Also, that's considered navigable waters. That just happened in 2019. Y'all need to catch up on that. And Supreme Court, Virginia versus EPA, they squashed these three-letter agencies. The EPA has a fence line protection. As soon as it hits that fence line, the 50 feet, there's no protection, okay? This 50 feet isn't enough. We need 500,000 feet for our water. You know what I'm saying? Parks versus Cooper, South Dakota. Those are case laws where farmers own land and the water came and gathered. People started fishing, started swimming in them. They went to the Supreme Court case. South Dakota Constitution 46-1-3. I'll say that again. South Dakota Constitution 46-1-3 says we the people own the waters and we could appropriate the waters to y'all. You know, we own the rights. And that Parks versus Cooper also said that when the land got water over it and the farmers started getting mad that we were using the water, the Supreme Court case came to a conclusion that the people own the water. Yes, the farmer owns the real estate underneath the water, but we do. And, you know, I'm glad that you brought up the protection of the water of Hill City. Because, you know, like he said, sometimes we have problems. There's more we're all people here. Every day we know there's a problem. No matter how good we plan and whatnot, there's a situational problem that we have to face. Okay, so I'm using these codified laws, WOTUS, and all this because it's ridiculous that they're not putting that all in, you know, into the ordinances. Those are codified laws, federal laws that are protecting us. It seems more like a pay to play again. You know, we'll make the rules and we'll hand them over to y'all. No, 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 no. That's not how it happens. We, the people, do it. Okay?
William, please address us, not the
Sorry, I'm
crowd.
just talking to him. Yeah,
And,
we, the people, help y'all make this. Okay, we are y'all bosses. I'm not trying to step on toes, but we are y'all bosses. We got y'all in there. We appreciate y'all. That's why we put y'all there. Now we're asking y'all to stand up as leaders and lead by leadership by using our constitutional codified laws. Okay, and those are very powerful ones that should be put into the ordinance to protect our waters.
Okay, so
Thank you.
so your main one that I got from your is 500 feet minimum, that you'd like to, for the
Actually, no, I
setbacks,
think
to follow the codified law.
WOTUS, Waters of the United States, which is protected. They redid the literature on it, so it's more user friendly for farmers and everybody. And it says permanent and intermediate creeks are protected. The
Okay,
20,000 acre withdrawal, that's them trying to shut us up. They're not protecting the navigable waters that are permanent and intermediate creeks. I requested from the Army Corps Engineer and Forest Service 109,000 acres. I sent it to the Land Bureau. I sent it to Forest Service and, like I said, Army Corps Engineer.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify
Yeah, well,
what I
there's a lot of laws and there's a lot of things. So yeah, this ordinance that they're writing up, I hope that they follow the waters of the United States and also the Parks versus Cooper. Because that's and the Supreme Court case, Virginia versus EPA.
Okay,
All right.
thanks, William.
Thank y'all for y'all time.
So we're going to move forward with the speaker request forms. We have 2, 4, 6, 7 more. As I said, please be respectful of, this is a work session, and there's no action on this, but give us your I'd like you to give us your recommendations, what was on the agenda, so we could write them down, and we'll have Cody come back up after that, and the commission will work on that. So next on my list is Jamie Guild.
What's her name?
Jamie, is it
Geed, I'm sorry. I
Geed?
said
Okay, it looked
right.
like an L, so I said Guild.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's no worries. I get a lot of different versions. It's Jamie Geed. Good morning, commissioners. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Basically, and I'm not sure if I fall under other or not, but right now, we don't have enough water to last 100 years. We need to value and protect it, and I know experimental mining isn't that scary, and yet it eventually leads to real mining. So even when we let them experiment around near our water beds, what we're saying is maybe your 10 to 15 years, we don't mind it. We don't have the protections in place to monitor, and listening to leave it to the state, leave it to the state, leave it to the state. The state legislature has a lot of work to do, as far as I'm concerned, because protections should be put into place and not just pass the buck to the state. So I don't know for sure all the power that you have, but I do urge you to consider putting a moratorium on mining permits in the county and/or consider to restart the process that could lead to a county hard rock mining ordinance. You know, we just support the idea of putting a hold on until you actually have a solid ordinance in place that has considered how to protect our water, protect our families, protect our lives, protect our tourism industry. Just keep us in mind while you're considering this industry. I'm not saying I'm against all mining. I'm saying protect the water, and if we don't have the protections in place, and if it's not done at the state legislature yet, then maybe we should hold on these permits and hold these projects until we have the safety laid in. And if it's not you, then let's figure out who and protect our people, okay?
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Quinn Neft? Is that Neff? I should know your last name by now, Quinn.
NEFF, bad handwriting.
Neff, yeah.
I just have a couple comments, Quinn, with the Quinn Neff with South Dakota Mineral Industries Association. A couple things just to clarify, and then some comments on the ordinance where it stands. And what it was commented earlier that exploration drilling, may pose a risk to groundwater. I think it's important to know what's used in exploration drilling. It's no different than drilling a residential or commercial water well. We're talking about bentonite and water. So there's not anything, that is used in the process that would contaminate drinking water or groundwater. Second, I think I'm glad Planning and Zoning's put together a spreadsheet to look at other counties and states and what they're doing. I think our draft ordinance is pretty in line with a lot of places, and we also have Lawrence County that we've used as an example to build off of. And so I guess I'd just encourage the commission to move forward on this ordinance because, well, number one, I think October was the date set back, where we left off on the ordinance. So I appreciate you guys sticking to that schedule. But we have a lot of drafts out there. I'm not sure which draft is the draft we're on these days. So I think it'd be good to get that draft out to people so we know what we're looking at. And then I guess we need to kind of move forward on this ordinance. I don't think there's any need for a moratorium on, number one, not all mining permits, because all of the mining permits right now in Pennington County fall under 320. I'm not aware of any hard rock mining permits. If we talk about permits at the state level, I don't think there's been any applications for hard rock mining at the state level. So putting a moratorium on those, there's really no purpose to that. And then I guess one other clarification on lithium mining. I think it's important to clarify, number one, just that lithium is a metal. It doesn't exist in a natural state. So that doesn't mean you go out and grab a handful of lithium. Lithium's in a rock. It's no different than if we were mining mica, feldspar, quartz, beryl, they all occur in a pegmatite rock. So when we talk about lithium mining, it's really no different than what we've done for 100 years here, mining mica, feldspar. You're mining a rock that has lithium in it, but these folks are just looking for a particular mineral in that pegmatite that has more lithium than maybe another, rock that has mica in it, if that makes sense. So when we say lithium mining, we're really just talking about pegmatite mining, and anything that happens here locally right now is just mining that rock. I think Dakota Stone would be a good example. They're mining feldspar and that same type of rock to sell as landscape rock. But if we were to ever see a company get past exploration, find a lithium deposit or an ore that has lithium in it, we don't have any processing facilities in South Dakota. We don't have any in the United States except for one in North Carolina. So any chance, the biggest chance of a lot of that ore, if they were successful, would be shipped out of state unless someone's going to be building a $300-400 million processing facility in South Dakota. So just wanted to clarify on the lithium side, exploration side, and I think the ordinance get a draft out there and move the process forward, because I know, Ron, you've put committees together. We've had a lot of input from different parties, and so I think we have a lot of information to move forward, and it'd be good, I think, for everybody to get that ordinance in place. So.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Quinn. Mr. Lester.
Quinn, just explain this to me because I'm not a geologist or any of that. So if you found this rock that had lithium in it, how do you get it out of the ground? What materials do you use it to get it out of the ground? You said there's no processing here locally, so they'd have to load it in a truck or a train and
Dump
ship
truck,
it across.
yeah.
But how do you get it out of the ground? Is it blasting? Is it just digging? Is it?
So
Walk
that's
me through
where
that.
the exploration comes into play, is you're looking for, I'll get a little technical, but spodumene. So spodumene is the mineral in these pegmatite type rocks, which is your granites around Keys.
I get what you're saying. I guess my question, you're kind of going in a little, do you need to use a chemical like you do for gold to pull it out of the rock, or do you just bust up the rock, load it in a truck
We're
and ship
talking
it?
about mining ore right now, so it's just a rock. But the exploration, the purpose of that is you have these deposits and you're looking for a specific mineral. So if that spodumene that has lithium in, is it a vein this wide? Is it a vein this wide? So that's where exploration comes into play, is to know what are we looking at possibly mining. And if we got to mining, it's no different. And then if we were mining quartz, feldspar, they're going to blast. But again, exploration, is it underground? Is it going to be a surface mine? You don't know until you do exploration and kind of figure out where the mineral is. And so that goes into your mine permitting process at the state level. If it's going to be a surface, underground, there's a lot of steps in there. I guess if you're going to talk about processing again, that's one of the reasons it's a critical mineral, is because the U.S. right now, we have one processing facility in North Carolina, a mine in Nevada that processes it, but it still goes to China to be refined into what we know as lithium metal that goes in batteries. So you have mining, processing, refining, manufacturing. There's a whole process there. And, a lot of that's done in China as far as refining, manufacturing.
Mr. Chair.
You got a question for Quinn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a statement. Quinn, when I talked to you yesterday, I explained that a lot of the phone calls and emails I get are people that are just concerned with the word mining. It doesn't take us too long to remember what happened to Lawrence County, the water sources,
What
super
year
sites.
are we talking?
And so,
What year are
you
we
can't
talking?
blame people for being a little scared when people say mining, especially in an area that our second largest industry in the state of South Dakota is tourism. So I think.
Does that mean we shouldn't have any other industries?
No, I'm just saying, this is why I think people are concerned that if we do an ordinance that we get it right. Because South Dakota is the Black Hills, I think, is a very unique area, and we just want to make sure that we do everything to be good custodians of that.
I agree.
Okay,
I have a question for Quinn.
Ms. Hadcock.
Couple. On exploration, bentonite and water, anything else you use that would contaminate the water? When you're doing exploration, would you hit something that would contaminate it? How does it work? Because when we watched you, you did it with water, and it didn't seem that it was going to contaminate anything. Most of it was just where we getting the water from. So,
The only other things that would be used is when you're drilling those holes, no different than a water well, is you want to have your water return, and the water's used to cool the bit. So they may use, I've seen, like it's polymers, I guess you'd call it, that break down organically, but those are used to seal up any cracks in your hole, so you're getting that water back, so you're not using more water than you need to. And in fact, any of those polymers that are used are the data sheets, the material safety data sheets are given to DANR and/or the Forest Service. It's on federal land, so you can actually look at those data sheets for yourselves to see what's in those materials.
And so when they keep talking about contamination of groundwater, tell me how you would contaminate, or tell me about groundwater. What kind of rules and regs federally and state? I remember Danielle had a book this thick just on groundwater and water stuff that had to do with mining, all the rules and regs federally, all the rules and regs state. People keep talking like Ron just said about mining scares people because of groundwater contamination. Can you explain when's the last time we had groundwater contamination from hard rock mining?
I can't give you a specific example, but when Ron was talking, I think a lot of the experience up in Lawrence County was pre-regulatory, 1970s, before we had the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act. Those were not in place. So yeah, we saw some, and that goes for every industry. It wasn't just mining that had issues with contaminating water back then, hence the Clean Water Act. Otherwise, I think the gentleman that brought up WOTUS and the state not having rules in place is a bit misleading, because DANR, all their groundwater rules have to follow federal law. I mean, EPA's laws are applied by our state DANR agency. That's the rules they follow. So when you talk about all the rules, those are federal rules that our state and every other state are bound by at the federal level, but they are the enforcement for the state. The EPA doesn't have an office in Pierre that comes out to these sites. So each state has a Department of Environment that enforces federal law.
Thank you. And what I've looked up, it wasn't hard rock mining that was the most contaminant of our groundwater. And we keep talking about our groundwater. It was stormwater protection areas, guys. So if you want to look at groundwater protection, we need to make some pretty stringent areas in stormwater protection through some of our rules and
Surface water as
regulations.
well. I think Lori's here from Hill City. Maybe you can add to this, but it wasn't too long ago I saw a video in Hill City of Spring Creek, right by Tracy Park there, where there was a bunch of the very obvious fuel on the water going through the creek, and people were wondering where that came from. Well, it came from a diesel pickup that overfilled at the gas station, and that diesel ran right down the storm drain and directly into the creek. Would that be allowed in exploration or mining? Absolutely not. So I think when we talk about the risks to water, we should look at obvious ones, and maybe, are we creating an ordinance for filling up your car and truck at the gas station? No. But these rules for exploration and mining are already there. They're stringent. I haven't seen an exploration project dump fuel in a surface water.
My bottom line is, we want to make rules and regulations and have government regulate it, which it does through the federal and state. And now, in South Dakota, how many mining companies do we have? Number two, again, if we're looking up Clean Water Act and we want to worry about groundwater protection, let's start making some stringent rules and let's counteract. What do you want to do, federal and state, through stormwater and other areas that have more contamination than even mining does? So we keep hearing about mining, and I too want to protect the groundwater, but there's rules and regulations in place already, and for us to keep being more stringent than other people, we are government. We don't regulate by more stringent rules and regulations if it has to do with people trying to do a business in South Dakota, because we're doing that through some other stuff we're doing, and just not agreeable on that. If it's not protected through the federal and state, and it's not protected enough, I'll tell you, and I'll tell you guys to read some of the books through the mining, through the federal and state for protection of groundwater that people are missing out on today.
Mr. Chair, can I add one more thing? Because obviously concerns about water quality and water quantity. I think it's important to note when we talk about quantity of water, exploration, mining. It's no different than our wastewater treatment plants or water treatment plants. I mean, we're recycling water. So when you hear about the consumption of water in the mining industry, what about the consumption of water in the tourism industry? Well, all that water is recycled. It ends up in a wastewater treatment plant if you're talking about tourism, and that goes back in the creek. So I think it's important to know that every industry, whether it's development, tourism, all consume water, but consuming water is a misleading term because we really are recycling that water. So
Thank you, Quinn. And I'll just reiterate again,
Dude,
we're looking at
learn at him
recommendations.
out there, Lloyd.
But
If you can't behave, you need to leave.
who,
He's telling the speaker he's full of bullshit.
oh, yeah.
The gentleman on the far right.
No, we don't, we're not, that's
Bruce,
not
if you can't
acceptable
behave,
behavior
leave.
for this. This is an open meeting to discuss this ordinance of hard rock mining. It's kind of drifted a little bit, but I'm going to start holding it to what it is. Recommendations for the hard rock mining ordinance suggestions that was on the list from the Planning Commission Department. So let's stick to that. No, just, you're not, I have the floor. And you have a speaker request form, and you'll have your time to speak when call you up here. So that's how we're gonna be respectful of every speaker that's up here, but I'm gonna ask you to please, let's start sticking to the ordinance. This is, this commission has taken a lot of time to learn about what's happening in our community and working with the water in our community, and they hold that to the highest standard. So this isn't our first meeting that we've heard all this. We've all heard this several times. This is a work session to gather your input, give us some direct directions that you would like to see happen on there, like the first speaker did. He referred to the setbacks. Give us something hard that you want. If you're up here just to give a speech, we've heard it all before. So, sorry, Mr. Allison, I'll get you to you when you're in line. So, but let's be respectful of everybody in this room, including the commission. I know this is a sensitive issue. I didn't hear that.
I did.
I think you owe him an apology. If that behavior's, if you're gonna use that type of language in this room, no, it isn't.
No, I
This is a
heard you.
public meeting. So that's not between you and him. This is recorded. And we were respectful to everybody.
It's a little frustrating, the total duality.
Let's move on.
Okay.
When the mining people want to do something and the pro mining people do it, they can talk about anything that they want. But when it comes down to the specific things that have to do with this ordinance, who want to raise real concerns, don't have to be limited.
It was that I can't control the questions that are asked to the speakers. So I'm asking everybody to be respectful, be direct when they come up. My next speaker is Dr. Lilas Jardine.
Who is
no, yes.
Jordan?
Sorry, I slaughter everybody's name.
My name gets slaughtered all the time.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Lilias Jarding, and I am a citizen of Rapid City. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. Good to see the commissioners again. There are a couple of specific things that I wanted to talk about. One is, I know we, or the planning department, have considered the Lawrence County ordinance, and I would just encourage to put that on here too, so that we can see what what that input might have been, to put that on the grid here. Second thing is that I would encourage the commission and the planning department to at least look in a little more detail at exploration. The state process is that there's no permit granted. What it is that the person who wants to explore fills out a form that's called a notice of intent to explore. And then the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources processes the form and usually puts some conditions on the drilling. But there's no way for the public to have any input. There's no way to really consider the application. It just goes through. And the same goes for lithium mining licenses. They just go through. So pegmatite lithium is a hard rock mineral and belongs in the hard rock mining ordinance. And so that's the another point that I wanted to make
Okay.
very clearly. I'm not going to get into too much of this, but I think given the last speaker's talk about the cleanliness of the mining industry in recent years, there was the Gilt Edge mine south of Deadwood that's a Superfund site currently. That mine was started and ended within the second half of my lifetime. So it may be antique to somebody who's 18, but to those of us who are older, it's a current issue. And let's see, there was a third thing. I think that's the main things I have to say, but as I'm probably the only person in the county with a doctorate that focuses on environmental policy, and you are talking about setting environmental policy, I want to make it clear that I'm available if there are additional questions outside this forum, and have done a lot of research and presented at conferences on these topics and have a lot of resources, and I want to make those available to the county.
So Lila, you've seen the agenda, and is there any suggestions that you wanted added to Hard Rock
Putting lithium under hard rock.
lithium? That's one of
And
them.
looking again at exploration, so that there might be the county's kind of the last line of defense in these things, because the federal government is in Denver and Omaha, and the state government is in Pierre and understaffed, and just lets things go through because of the way state law is written. And people are working on changing that, but right now, that's the way it is.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, so I have it written down.
Yeah, and then I also brought you all the latest map of, from the Bureau of Land Management's database on all the active mining claims in the Black Hills. It's 293,000 acres. You will see that the brown ones are the new ones since April, and Hill City and Keystone are both completely surrounded by active mining claims. So I brought you each a copy of this to look at.
Thanks, Les.
Mr. Chair,
Is it, you have a question for? Yeah.
can I ask a question about that map? Is that like individual mining claims as well? Like if I own 20 acres and that's my mining claim on that 20 acres, does it include all of those?
It doesn't count private controlled land, it's just on the Forest Service controlled land. Unless under your private land, you have federal land on the subsurface.
Right.
And then it can be claimed.
Okay. That's what I want to make sure, because I do know there's a lot of people with private land inside the
Yeah,
Forest Service land that does claim, that have claims on them.
a lot of people don't own their mineral rights, so that's why that becomes an issue.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roskin.
Lilius, a former speaker, he indicated that he thought we should have a larger setback. He mentioned 500 feet. I think he was referring to on this chart, a setback to water. Would you be in agreement with that? Right now, it looks like Pennington County has none, and I think he was recommending 500 feet. If I understood that right, I'm not sure if I understood it right.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically what I recommended, but there should be a solid setback, not just 30 feet or 50 feet to water when we're talking about mining.
Kind of water.
And we have a lot of water
Mining,
contamination from past mining in the hills. and we
not
don't
drilling.
need-
I'm just talking about
No.
this chart right here.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking.
Set back to water. Sorry.
No, that's part of the stuff that we're talking about, is some
Right.
have it, some don't, and
Okay, so Gunnison County, 500 feet, and then most of them don't, and so we followed, what the majority of them are doing, none, but I believe that gentleman said, we should be looking closer to the 500 feet for that.
That was the first speaker.
So I'm just making a point there, that's all.
Okay. Thanks, Lilas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lilius.
Mr. Bruce Ellison.
Good morning. I do want to apologize this is a very emotional issue for me, and I apologize that it got a little bit the best of me in terms of my comment. I did not mean for it to be an open air type of thing, but reflects my frustration, and reflects my frustration in part because I hear the world is rosy, well-regulated, well-monitored, and it's not the reality. I heard a lot today about, well, we have federal laws and we have state laws. The last time that we were here on the question of a withdrawal, we were told we shouldn't let the feds tell us what to do, the state doesn't do it, because we should have local control. The whole purpose of the hard rock mining ordinance, as I understand it for the county, is to give local control to the maximum extent that we can get. Because if we either have local control where we have full knowledge of what's going on, full insight and impact of what is being proposed, full, complete monitoring and regulation and enforcement. It's not just the Superfund site. Last time when we were here, we had a former DENR at that time, hydrologist, who talked about how, well, the state protects everything. He was the one that signed off on the Superfund site that the state would protect by requiring the company to follow rules and regulations. I heard today that we don't have any contamination in modern mining, but yet the DANR just approved an expansion of WRF, where it is known that selenium at dangerous levels is into the water supply. So whatever modern techniques we're talking about, whatever regulation enforcement we're talking about, well, if the company violates, so what? Unless we care, unless you care. I keep hearing about what we discussed with the Attorney General's office and we discussed with the state about the authority of the county. Apparently, and I have continually asked for this, I'd like to see a memorandum of law for that. I understood you folks had asked for that from the state's attorney's office. Because case after case after case in our Supreme Court says that you have a tremendous amount of authority. And you have the authority to make as strict an ordinance as you would like that could really protect us. So local control versus almost really no control. I could go into each one of the different sections. You asked for something specific.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time putting together a 27-page proposed hard rock mining ordinance. And I guess maybe I'll look at some of the different ones that has been looked at and presented to you so far, because everything that's in here came from somebody else's ordinance or permit requirements or other things. Most of what's in here was what the Planning Commission put together itself. It first put together a proposal, then it wiped out most of the good stuff, put in another one. And the state said, well, you can't do most of that stuff because it's too stringent. So most of that got wiped out. Well, I put it all back in. And I put it all back in because what this would do would really allow for us, to control what's going on here in the future. Yes, we have lots of water problems. Yes, they're caused by a lot of other things. We're not here to deal with those. I'd love to. I would love to go through the myriad of things that are threatening our water resources and come up with good ordinances separately for them. But we're talking about mining here, only mining. If we're not doing all the rest of them at once, let's do what we can. And this is something that we can. So this is not stuff that was made up that I put in here. This is all exists. And, you know, what I was hoping would be is that we would have a working session where we could find out what the problems are with what was being proposed. Not just talking about generic things of, well, trust this, trust the company, trust the state. We can't. There's no history of why we should. There was talk about exploration not causing problems. I seem to remember exploration well down by Wall, and a drilling bit got broken partway down. And they're still trying to figure out, as I understand it, how to stop the water contamination. How many, if they go down to 150 feet outside Hill City for exploration, how many water systems does that go through? How many mistakes does it make in the sealing up of each one of those holes? And there's been a tremendous problem with our DANR getting, and formerly the DENR, getting these companies to actually properly plug their holes. I mean, for example, in the Southern Hills, there's 1,500 unplugged holes down in an area where they want to do uranium mining. Last time that was done was 20, 30 years ago.
Okay, Mr. Ellis, I'm not trying to shorten you, but as I explained at the very beginning, what, you say you got a draft. I would suggest you send that to us.
I sent it to you.
Okay, and then this is a working session, and it's very obvious that if any action is going to be taken on this, we're going to have a special meeting and give people time. If I would have known this was going to happen, I would have set some limits on time limits for speakers, but I'm going to let you wrap up what you need.
Okay.
So we can finish the session. I'm guessing we're going to end up scheduling a special work session, so we'll have opportunity to speak on it again.
Really, I know we're talking about general principles. Again, they're very specific recommendations in here. They are all based on other counties, jurisdictions, efforts to protect water, to allow for the county to really know what's going on, to have the companies pay for everything that would be involved in testing and monitoring, regulations. I heard something about there's no socioeconomic studies in any counties. I thought the Lawrence County one had a socioeconomic study. I heard that, there's some discussion about lithium. If it's mined, and one of the things that I proposed in here, okay, currently it's considered to be a pegmatite aggregate under 320. But that's the kind of mining that's used for if you want to make construction materials, cement, other things. If they want to mine rock that includes lithium to do that, then that would fit perhaps within the aggregate mining statutes. If they want to pull out a hard rock mineral like lithium specifically, then we should look at that. And that's why I had proposed that if they want to mine it for construction materials, because that's really the purpose of that mining, although other kinds of hard rock mining, we want to try and regulate. This is not a benign substance either. And if it's going to be transported, what is that going to mean for trucks hauling? I mean, there's so many myriads of things that you have a chance to make strict regulations. The law will allow you to do that, and you're being encouraged not to do that. You're being encouraged to be as general as basically turning it back away from local control.
Please wrap it up.
And I would encourage that.
Mr. Chair.
You really look at that.
Mr. Lester.
I just have a question for clarification, and then I have a statement. Did you say something about no socioeconomic impact studies required? or except for Lawrence County or
I,
something.
I thought Lawrence County had one.
Actually, according to the state, we have to do it in all counties, according to the state. So if you read the chart that was here, it's required in all of South Dakota. So that means all counties are required to do a socioeconomic impact study.
I thought, I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner, I had perhaps misunderstood.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
Okay, because, and what you're saying is that in any mining ordinance, there would have to be a socioeconomic study?
I'm just saying with the chart that was given to us based on what Cody showed, and you were referencing that we didn't have to have one, but Lawrence County did. Well, by the chart, it actually is required in all of the state of South Dakota. So I would argue that your point to say that we don't require one, the state has it as a requirement.
So it's a state requirement, though, is that?
Yeah, so Cody Sack, environmental planner, that's saying that the state requires a socioeconomic impact study. I believe what Mr. Ellison's saying is that Lawrence County in their ordinance requires one that for Lawrence County specifically, not just what the state requires. I believe that's what you're
Yeah,
saying.
thank you. I'll finish up with one thing. Environmental impact study. We heard today the state can require them. They don't. And again, with a hard rock mining ordinance, you would have the authority to require that. So we're not just duplicating stuff. We're trying to take care of things that in the reality our state and federal agencies have failed to do. And I thank you for your time. And again, my apologies for the earlier remark. It was certainly inappropriate in public. I am really concerned about this. Our water is the most precious resource we have. And as long as we let other people make decisions about how it's going to be used instead of us here, we will continue to have less.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Ms. Hadcock.
I'm trying to figure out just some of the stuff that was said that the problems are we just trust people. There's rules and regulations. I've been up here for, I don't know, in politics, 16 years. When you start over-regulating stuff, and don't get me wrong, you want to regulate mining, and you want to regulate water. That's why there's a Clean Water Act. That's why there's mining rules and regulations. Those books are in a little packet. There's books and books and books. No, I haven't read all those books. Even for 320, there was books from the state and federal. To say they're not regulated enough. Obviously, they must be regulated enough in South Dakota because you have one mine? How many mines do we have in South Dakota? How many hard rock mining areas do we have in South Dakota? If it's so unregulated, most of the time, that's where all the mining starts coming in, when it's underregulated. So I guess I'm not getting it that it's underregulated because we have in South Dakota not a place where people feel like they want to come mine a bunch of hard rock mining or areas in South Dakota. So I think to say it's underregulated, it's not done enough for, I'll keep saying, you want to look at water, you want to make yourself mad, when it wouldn't be through mining. Look at the other areas in South Dakota where you need to protect the water, you'll be surprised. And if you want to look at the Clean Water Act, it's the cities, states, and the counties in some areas that are having the problem with the Clean Water Act. So again, South Dakota must be protected pretty well through that if they are not having the mining that the other states are having in South Dakota. So just saying.
Sure. Just one statement.
Okay.
I also want to point out, we know of a lot of contaminated water east of the base. And I did remember asking for support from those who want to clean that water. And I don't remember any of y'all coming to those meetings or coming here to show concern for that. We said, you need to show us that you want to show all the water to be clean. And so whenever I asked for help and I reached out and no one did, and it sounds like you're only focused on mining rather than the whole of clean water.
Good point.
my perception.
Yep, no, good point, and we'll try to get through these speaker requests and then address the work session request from planning on direction, which could be another special meeting or whatever. Next on my list is Lori Minor.
Thank you, Commission. I'm with the City of Hill City. I'm an alderman on the city council. And I know there's been much discussion today about Hill City. So may I pass out a map, please?
Yes, please.
This map was taken from the GIS system by our planning and zoning director. So that's where this map and this information came from. I thought it might be best just to tell you about the water situation in Hill City as it is under much discussion. For the purposes of this map, you'll see an orange box. That is where they will, as I understand it from Michael Schlumberger of Midwest Lithium, they will be starting the exploratory drilling possibly as early as next week and will continue until completion. The green lines outline the borders of city property, so you will see that there are shared borders with 2 residential homes within the city of Hill City. There are 2 yellow dots kind of to the right of the orange box. Those are identified as water wells. Those are 2 private residences of people that actually live in the county but access their home through streets in Hill City. The red dot kind of up to your right is our city water well. That's one of 2. We have 2 water systems that really don't connect. It's a manual process to transfer from one side to the other. So this water well controls provides water to about half the town. We do not have a water treatment plant. We inject chlorine right at the site. So should anything get into the groundwater, say any chemicals, and Mr. Lassiter, you asked about chemicals. When I talked to Mr. Schlumberger with Midwest Lithium, what he explained to me and what I understood was if they actually go to the mining and they pull the spodumene out of the ground, that the lithium in there is of a lower concentration and to pay to ship that rock elsewhere. They would do some form of concentrating of that, and they would use soaps and fatty acids. And I asked him to give me a name to those, because in literature I've read that like trisodium phosphate would be a soap. He said he could not give me the names of those at this time until they do the exploratory drilling. So I just wanted to let you know that all these yellow dots are people within the county, mostly within the county, that have private wells. And I know I would certainly support having a distance between wells and any mining operation. I know that we've had lengthy discussions. If you have any questions for me, whether now or in the future, please don't hesitate to contact me. Mr. Ross Connect has mine.
Thank you, Lori. And just for clarification, that lithium's under the 320 ordinance. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just a statement, if you don't mind.
I think I heard him first. Mr. Laster.
Just out of curiosity, are those residents that are right next to it, and I'm concerned with individual wells, but have they been testing their water to make sure that it's clean at the current state? And have they been testing their well levels so that if something does end up happening moving forward, they have documented evidence of what their well level is? I'm tracking it.
I want to make sure, are these the 2 that you're?
Yes, ma'am. Just to the east of that orange area for the exploratory, because I have a well and I maintained testing it all the time to verify what was in it. And so that's how I could definitely show whenever it got contaminated. And I also could prove my levels. And so if anything was in the area to do drawdown on my well, I would know it because my well levels were always at a constant level or 2 feet low or 2 feet higher, but never, outside of that range. So it would be due diligence from a well owner to make sure that they have documented evidence of the status of their well over years. I mean, that's a good thing for all private well owners, so that if something ever does come in and you're concerned about it, you can show, hey, over the last 10 years, this is how my well performed, and now all of a sudden it's not. That's something to let the public know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Roskinek.
Only thing I was going to say, the exploratory drilling, we worry about the water, but what I worry about more so is if they find what they're looking for, then what happens? Do we got something in place to protect us? Because if they find what they're looking for, they're not doing it because it's a hobby. They're for profit. And when they find what they're looking for, if they do, then the whole dynamics of Hill City is going to change. You're going to have mining intermixed with tourism. And I think this is what a lot of people are concerned about. And if that's going to happen, I'm not totally against mining, but I think we have to be responsible about it. Like Bruce said, if we can control that at a local level, then we have more control. If we just I see stuff at the state just gets rubber stamped. That's what it appears. And if we can get more control, and I think the counties where we're going to do that, then we really need to be focused on that. That's just my opinion as a commissioner.
Thank you, Laura.
Ms. Lori, we spent over a year or more on ordinance 320. It is local control. It is very well written from people that don't like mining and people that do mining. Pete Lean is one of them that in town here also does mining all over the west side. And we haven't in Rapid City, except for when I was on the council, it was the dust. So there is local controls. There is things to protect the water. Again, I truly believe on some of this stuff, we just want to overregulate from fear more than fact. So some people you could probably call is, I think Quindef has some mining people that you can visit with to figure out some of this stuff. And they won't just tell you, they'll give you references. And that's what I ask for when they say they're not contaminating water, how many mines you have. I actually meet with these people, and then I meet with people that don't like mining and try to figure out their issues too. But you might want to have them come, meaning the mining company. I don't know what Quinn Neff's company or whatever, or who he works for, whatever, that's the truth. I just know him and a group do some mining stuff to make sure people know the facts. So for me, it's huge. And just to say you want local control and mining is going to hurt tourism, that kind of stuff, it won't. If it did, we'd be out of business in Rapid City already. So just encourage you, go find out the facts and the information, and tell them about your wells. Tell them this, and don't ask Mike. Ask Quinn's from Keystone, that area. He would tell you. I
Okay.
trust Quinn. I'm one of those people that just because I don't love mining and I like water protection and I like infrastructure taken care of, so I go find the facts. I don't just listen to people up here and then I believe what they say. Just because you're new, it's a good idea.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you very much.
Next on our list is Jolie McCoy. And Jolie, I think you got down here lifting in mine and you realize that's the 320 ordinance, so,
Correct, yes.
and that's not what we're talking about today, but
Yes, I just wanted to, I'm just coming as a grandma and a citizen who lives very close to the new proposed lithium mine. That's why I put that down.
okay.
I just have a lot of concerns about the environment and animals, plants, water. Also, nobody's talked much about the traffic and the pollution just from carrying rocks around. We certainly see that with some of the other mining in the area. And I just would like to see a moratorium until we have a lot more information about what's going on with some of the exploration mining. And that same point that was made earlier, that exploration, the whole point of exploration is to lead to big mines, and huge holes in the ground. So that's one thing I don't like to see in my neighborhood. So that's really all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Jolie. Appreciate it. Next on our list is Rick Bell.
Jody's last name.
McCoy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. My name is Rick Bell. I live here in Rapid City. I've been an environmental engineer for 40-plus years. I have a lot of concerns about hard rock mining in this area. I was thrilled to find out that it's back on the agenda to at least give this another kickstart, and I would welcome some kind of working meeting and something to move this forward. I know it's been at least a 3-year process as far as I'm aware. So I, just give you kudos for having moved this along to the next step a little bit. Just be quick. Three things that I would say that I'm in favor of is bigger setbacks, and 500 foot was mentioned. I can't remember. Again, there's been many, many drafts over the time, and it's gone from some bigger number down to 50 feet. I think 50 feet's too small. I'd like to get in the working session and understand what's the appropriate number, but it's more than 50. So that's one thing. I would also be in favor of a moratorium, even though Mr. Neff said, don't worry, there's no mining in this area. I think that it's been 3 years, so there could have been a mine. We need to have something on the books to put things in abeyance until we get a firm new 321. And as far as 320 regulating lithium, I think that, has been said, pegmatite is a hard rock, so I think it should be included. And lastly, I would encourage this commission to really step out and realize that you have the authority to be more stringent. And as Mr. Ellison said, there's been times when I've been in this commission and we don't like what the feds are telling us, we don't like what the state's telling us, and yet we're willing at this point to say, don't worry, the state has everything covered. So I just would encourage you to be maybe a little more stringent where we're talking about local control has been mentioned. So those are my 3 or 4 things. The other thing in terms of this exact packet that we got today, I don't understand why the 4 pages of the permit application were included in this. We haven't talked about it at all. It seems pretty inappropriate when a lot of the things that are covered in there need to be specified in the ordinance. And so it's put the cart before the horse, and I don't understand why those 4 pages of permit application.
Informational. This is a working session.
Yeah.
It's not a normal meeting.
Right. So those are my big things. And then the other thing that I would like to discuss with Cody is, why these 13 or 14 other examples were given in the spreadsheet. I know that, I Googled this morning, there's 3,000 counties within the United States. I think those are just the 50 continental United States. So how did we select these particular 14? And as Mid mentioned, Lawrence County is not even on here, which is our nearest county and the most similar thing that we could be comparing ourselves to. So I just like to hear from zoning as far as that goes. And I got back in town Monday night. I just heard about this meeting. I'm sure that if I could do a little research, or we could do a little research, that we could come up with many, many other counties where the setbacks are more than what's shown here, that the water protections are more stringent. So, this is, I don't know, I'm not going to use the word that I'm thinking of, but it's CYA in terms of what we've been shown here today as far as justifying what's in the current ordinance. So I'd like to see more work done, and I'm looking forward to working on that with.
I'd encourage you to sit down with Cody after today or after this meeting, kind of go through some of that stuff. He could answer those for you.
And lastly, I'd just like to say to Mr. Lassiter, I did offer to help you on the PFAS problem out at the base. So I think, if you're looking for help, I'm willing to step back into it.
It wasn't necessarily directed at you. I don't think you were here the last time we had a conversation with a group of individuals.
Yeah,
So
I was out of town, but I'm more than willing to help.
absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
I'll stand by for questions if needed. Thank you.
Our final speaker request form is from Tanya Stans.
Good morning, everybody. Hihani Washte, that's what we say. I'm a Oglala Sioux tribal member. and I'm also a resident of Pennington County. We were here before COVID regarding tribal historic preservation offices in the state of South Dakota. There's 9 tribes in South Dakota, but there's 16 tribes federally connected to the Black Hills under our docket 73 and 74, mostly 73. But this is the Black Hills land claim, and probably from the look on all of your faces, you're a little uneducated about that. And that's where we stand with our Supreme Court ruling, U.S. Supreme Court ruling, proving it was stolen. So our issue is, yeah, there's all these regulations, there's all these, laws that appear to be, but as you can tell, I'm guessing maybe there's 1 or 2 of us that spoke on this issue. So the due government process is to reach out to those tribal historic preservation offices so they can tell their enrolled members about these issues regarding hard rock. Now, hard rock mining impacts cultural uses. They call them cultural resources. But what we're talking about is ceremonial use. And see, there's a large community of natives that live here from not just the 9 or the 16. Under the the Title 5 program here in Pennington County, there's got to be like hundreds of tribes here that are ignored in this hard rock mining process. I wear this shirt today because it honors our pilgrimage, our spiritual journey, our annual spiritual journey around the Black Hills. We do that spiritual run every year, and we run by Pennington County. It starts in Bear Butte, and we run a whole round around the Black Hills. We are called Pte Oyate, and there's we're still Ocheti Shrakomi, but before that, we were Pte Oyate, and we have our creation comes from here, comes from the Black Hills. You go to Wind Cave, we come out of the Wind Cave. So, with regards to respect and acknowledgement to the tribes here, I ask that you follow this memorandum, this moratorium, because the tribes haven't been honored here. And I see things like Pennington County working with police officials, with the reservation crime. I see that. So where's the other side of this to the hard rock mining issues? Where is that? Why is that ignored? Why are we neglected? Why are we abandoned? Why aren't any of those tribal officials sitting here? And I didn't bring my papers. I wish I did. I was kind of caught off. So write this down. This is Browner versus the City of Albuquerque. It's a Supreme Court ruling on water quality for ceremonial use. And ceremonial use is, we see the powwow. The powwow was here this weekend. Lots that they pack the monument. They bring the money here. We revenue off that. So with that, there should be that same respect when it comes to our ceremonies. And there's different cultural experts, but where I come from, a small community in Oglala, and so that's what I know, those cultural practices. And I live here in Rapid City, and I practice my culture up there. I sit on those hills. I'm disturbed. I'm disrupted. Again, there's lots of acts of Congress that uphold us but aren't recognized in this Pennington County Commission. You go to Bear Butte, go talk to the ranger. That's upheld on 1978 Religious Freedom Act. We are guaranteed our spiritual freedom. Our pipes are called peace pipes. We're up there to honor our bond with this earth and our universe. That's how long we've been here. And we know our history. We know our ancient history. We know we didn't come from the Bering Strait. We've always been here from the Black Hills. And, you know, again, science wants to conflict that. Well, let us be honored the same way. We have yet to get there. Those regulations haven't been amended here or upkept. And that's what I'm asking for. This moratorium to go, and you know, right now we're sitting with the Forest Service and that mineral withdrawal, that's 10%. But, you know, if we stop that up there because, you know, there's a ban on uranium mining in the state of Virginia because water, the natural flow of water comes down. You don't have to tell us, Lakotas, that we know that. So we respect everybody downriver, downstream, and those shouldn't be happening up there because it's going to go in our ceremonies. And you know, none of you are a spiritual practitioner. You don't sit in those lodges for hours and hours with that water. There's no filter on that water. And you're talking about that little creek there, that little stream there, we're putting that in our ceremony. And that isn't honored. That isn't recognized. We're still battling with federal, state government laws. You know, before they had TIPOs, they had SHPOs. And tribal government, yeah, they should be telling us about this, but unfortunately, they don't. So we lack this, and we ask you to honor the people here in Rapid City. You can see how we're spiritually declined. You know, we need our ceremonies back. We need healing. We need those lodges. We need those camps. And no, we're not all homeless. We're not all uneducated.
Okay,
We
Tanya,
still know our ways. Thank you.
could you, I'll give you another, I've been averaging about 10 minutes per person, so if you could wrap up, you're asking for moratorium, am I correct?
And to
Okay.
consult with the tribes.
I'll consult with tribes.
All the tribes here, not just the 16 federally connected.
Okay.
And I ask you to do your research on them.
Yeah, I know
So you uphold our side of
Yeah.
our spiritual practices.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up our speaker requests. So Cody, for clarification, Hard Rock Mining, we were working on it. We sent it to legal probably over a year ago or so, and it's been kind of sitting neutral. So it was suggested to be put on this agenda to give planning direction on what to do. Do they want to continue on with it, with some changes? It seems pretty obvious to me, and I think Deb knows this from the 320. She was on that commission. That took, what, a year and a half, Deb?
Yep.
And so this is a very sensitive subject, very sensitive. And so Planning Commission is looking at what direction to go. We don't have to take any action today. We could just take the information and absorb it in and put it on the agenda at a later date with some direction for either a special committee, some special meetings for public hearings, that type of thing. Our former committee, that's the type of things we could do. But that's why it's on our agenda today, is for commission input and giving direction to the staff on what to do. And it's
Mr. Chair.
perfectly okay to leave it as is for right now, too. Mr. Roskinek.
Cody, my question is why Lawrence County is not on this spreadsheet?
So I can, sorry, Cody Sack, environmental planner. I can add Lawrence County to the spreadsheet. Lawrence County has been brought up multiple times. And I know that they're currently going through, there's a mine being proposed. We just wanted to go outside of South Dakota to see what some of the other areas with larger mining industries have done. And I know Mr. Bell brought up that there's 3,000 counties. I'm sorry that I couldn't look at all 3,000 counties in the United States for you guys. I looked through multiple in all the states, not just the ones that are on this board. Some of them didn't even mention mining. The vast majority of them didn't even mention mining. So it wasn't that we just picked and choose which ones we wanted. We went through, and if you want me to, I can go put those same counties on there and say no mining mentioned in the ordinance as well. That would make about 50 or 60 counties.
Mr. Chair,
So.
I would like you to add Lawrence County and maybe the state of Idaho, Montana, and Nevada. And if, as Mr. Bell said, there's got to be some counties out there. I don't know what they are, but they're probably out there, and maybe Rick can help you in the future. I'd like to see a little more diversity there. This does seem a little one-sided to me. That's just me.
Mm-hmm. And I apologize if it seems that way. Again, for Colorado, for instance, there was probably about 25 counties that I looked at that didn't even mention mining. So the ones that I did find for mining, I put in there, and I could have done. I guess, like I said, I could have done more, but our office is pretty busy, and for me to spend 4 weeks researching other county mining ordinances. So really, as Commissioner LaCroix said, we're just looking for direction. This is for your information. If you want us to put a setback to water, that's what we're looking for. If whether you have a number or not, that's something we can discuss. If you want a larger setback to residential structures to property lines, that's the kind of this direction that we're looking for. Because I know it's been brought up at a lot of meetings. We had one last October. I know Commissioner Roskonek was a part of it. I believe Commissioner Lassiter was a part of it too, where we got the proponents of mining and the opponents of mining together to try to work out an ordinance. It really didn't go anywhere. So that's why it kind of stopped for a while. But then we were directed to try to start it up again to get an ordinance going. So that's what we're kind of looking for, is just the direction.
And I appreciate that, but my point is that these folks, the mining industry, it's for profit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we need the larger setbacks. If it's for profit, then I think we need to look at larger setbacks. It's for the general public. That, they don't have a lot of choice in this, and this is how we could create a buffer that would protect their property rights.
So
one
you'd want a
suggestion.
larger setback to property, residential structures, and water, or just to property lines?
I think the water setback and the setback for property lines. And the recommendations that I heard today were 500.
Is there anything else from commission suggestions for planning?
Chair,
Ms. Hadcock?
I would hope you would look at what the suggestions are from the federal and the state instead of just listening to local people. There's more than 5 to 10 people in Pennington County. Again, federal and state rules and regulations. Pennington County, whether it's VHRs or this, are starting to overregulate to the point where government control is getting out of hand. If you read the rules and regulations through federal and state, you'd find that these things are already covered. But to say they're not without knowing those rules and regulations through the state and the federal level, again, Holly, you remember the books we had? There was like 8 books like this big through mining. It wasn't a little business book. That's why 320 took a year and a half. That's why I'll just say, I'm saying to read those or to talk to people about that, because I was on the mining ordinance. So a lot of the people that didn't like mining came to pass that they didn't have an understanding of it. They didn't have the understanding of all the protections of the federal and state level. So to say it's underregulated, again, South Dakota isn't a mining state. It's sand and gravel mostly. We use it through the government and otherwise. So, I keep saying, overregulation of business, to me, is unconstitutional, to the point where you're getting into people's business that you shouldn't. We are government. We are supposed to have the fine line of knowing the rules and regs and not adding more and more to people that are trying to do business or trying to do things in South Dakota. Again, if they are not regulating the water good enough, if with the Clean Water Act or just water is not protected in South Dakota, I'm with you. But I'll keep telling you, read the Clean Water Act and find the contaminations. It's the storm water. It's the city and the counties and the states through stormwater and other areas of chemicals, through fertilizations and other things. If you want to look at Hill City, most of that contamination through Sheridan Lake and the other areas were from Hill City. So do your homework. It wasn't the mining companies. We're not talking about that today. But we keep talking about groundwater, and we want to overregulate it. But the most contamination isn't hard rock mining. It's stormwater, but we don't want to talk about that because, as Travis said, we just want to talk about mining. Let's overregulate mining. We need to overregulate ourselves if that's the issue.
Mr. Chair.
Look at Rapid City. Look at Rapid Creek in Rapid City. Look at the lake in Memorial Park. Look at the areas where the Air Force Base. 3 huge areas, and there's no mining going on except for hard rock mining and peatling. And ask them. Ask them, how much are you regulated? Because that's how we found the facts. That's how we learned. Didn't we, Holly? We were all sitting there dumbfounded by how many rules and regulations there are. And I don't know how many tribes, Miss Tanya, for reals, we talked about that because we had some tribal members that came to that. And they talked to us about doing some stuff on 320, which we did for the tribal members that came and talked for us. But again, we tried to cover it all, but a lot of it's already covered. And to overregulate certain industries to the point where that's not government's job unless there is a huge problem in hard rock mining and contamination in South Dakota.
Thanks, Deb. Mr. Lester.
Maybe we should have a different approach of how to move forward with maybe directing legal to give us an overview of basically, giving the Board of Commission an overview of the Federal Mining Act, the Fort Laramie Treaty, the South Dakota statehood, South Dakota counties, and all of the mining stuff that's related to that, so we can have a better understanding before anything. As far as if there's a directive, maybe we need to understand all the background rather than what's just being presented in different manners. That would probably be better for us, so we can research it and have all that data moving forward.
I agree with that, and that's a good recommendation. I would suggest that report be researched, and I'd hate to set a date right now because, quite frankly, I think that's going to be determined on how much time legal staff has to be able to do research and bring something back.
Good morning, Alexa Mueller, State's Attorney's Office. Commissioner Lassiter, could you repeat your request, and I might be able to give you a timeline?
Basically, the Federal Mining Act, the Fort Laramie treaties, our statehood, our counties. As far as I understand, the Federal Mining Act, and I'm just going to, was instituted way before all that other stuff. So, I mean, we probably want to understand how it all flows together, and so that we understand where we are in that process and how we can make a determination. Because it's just like with the railroad. I do know the railroad has certain things that citizens, we can't do anything against them because they were established long ago, and they have like first right-of-ways and things of that nature. So it just probably would be good to have an overall understanding of how it all works together, and so will we understand what our capabilities are to do based on what we can and can't do. Probably am I saying that right?
I think there's some things that we can do and can't, and I think that's what you're getting at.
And is that do you understand where I'm getting at?
Yes, it sounds rather comprehensive. I'm sure that we can put that together for you and give you a better understanding of what we as a county can and cannot do. I will say that given the comprehensive nature of the request, it could take probably about a month and a half.
Okay, I would probably not want to set a date at this point in time because we don't know what could happen. I would probably suggest that we put it on our agenda the first meeting of every month so we can update where you're at on that. That
Understood.
way, it's on public notice so that you guys know the first meeting of the month, which is on the first Tuesday. We'll have an update from legal on where they're at on the progress. I don't want to leave you guys hanging. You guys spent some time here today, so that at least gives you something.
Can I ask that legal, please put together a legal memorandum, the vast authority that the county has, meaning that we don't have any? A lot of Supreme Court cases from our state.
Well,
Nobody said we
no.
didn't have any.
I'm just going to say, Mr. Ellis, that this is a working session and trying to get information for us. So, I mean, that's what Mr. Laster's request is, so.
And I appreciate that. It was to supplement that, because a big point has been how much authority does this board have with its own board?
We didn't ask
Yeah.
that.
If,
Okay.
if I may.
This is the public comments over, we're on the commission's work.
Yes, and the memorandum that legal will put together is attorney work product that will not be provided to the public.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
So is everybody in agreement with that? Mr. Laster?
I am in agreement with that. I would just make one statement to Mr. Ellison. If he would like to take the time to do that research, I would definitely read it, and you're welcome to send it to me.
Okay.
And I would expect all the commission would probably be interested, but I for sure want it.
We're done with public comment. We're trying to get,
To add stuff too, why am I being ignored?
we're not adding stuff.
Well, Supreme Court ruling versus the tribe is,
Mr. Ellis is going to supply.
well, thanks for joining us, we're the actual native here.
You can turn in any information you would like to our staff. All you have to do is stop in and you can drop off all the information you need, or you can email it also. Is that acceptable, Tanya?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask Ms. Hancock to read about water exemptions, that's why that
Okay.
Clean Water Act gets ignored.
Okay, we're going to go back to the work session. Thank you. Cody, do you have an understanding of what the commission's wants?
I believe so, yes.
Anything else the commissioners want staff to look at? Okay, if not, we are going to move on to legislative updates. Would the commission want to take a short break or
Sure.
not?
5 minutes.
Yeah. So I'd move to take a 10-minute break.
Second.
Moved. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. I know how busy y'all's schedule is too.
Joan, we're going to go
I think
back into session. So we're going to start with legislative updates, 2023.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alexa Moeller, Pennington County State's Attorney's Office. I hope that this 2023 legislative update is a bit of a palate cleanser for you as we move from hard rock mining and then shortly into drainage, which is also a hot button topic here in Pennington County. There's not a lot on the legislative update as far as planning and zoning goes. The first update I did want to give you is legislation that was introduced by the Pennington County Board of Commissioners. Megan made me aware that the Pennington County Board of Commission sponsored legislation that regulated maintenance of livestock pipelines on highways. I took notes from Megan's book as far as how I'm presenting this legislation. This was set forth in Senate Bill 150. The changes that you see, these strike-throughs in red, are what has been deleted from the statute. The teal-ish blue that is in bold are what is added. If you have any questions as we go through, I'll be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. If they're very specific, I can certainly do some more research for you, as I've prepared for this a few times and memory is failing me
Chair.
slowly.
Ms. Hadcock.
So Alexa, this was brought forth by Justin Urig with our highway department, Joe Miller, so, our superintendent. So that's where that came from, by the way.
Understood. This was just
Good job.
what was communicated to me by Megan, so
Yeah.
that's all I wrote relaying. So this is the first piece of that bill that changed the ordinance. The second piece here is when the relocation is required. You'll note at the end of this particular statute language that states, however, removal or relocation of a livestock pipeline is required if the board determines it necessary to improve the highway or otherwise remove the pipeline for any county purpose. That does give you some extra new power that you wouldn't have otherwise had. This section of Senate Bill 150 is new. As you'll see, there is no bold blue or strike through. This is an entirely new section. And stop me if I'm moving too quick.
No, you're doing fine.
Good.
This is also an entirely new section pursuant to Senate Bill 50. This is the most legalese that you could find in this particular section. All right, planning and zoning. Just a very brief background on myself, I suppose, because several of you don't know a lot about me.
Just kidding.
I'm trying to keep myself short and sweet here, but I have been actively involved in the South Dakota legislature since I was about 16 years old. I was a legislative page. I was an intern with the governor's office. So I'm very familiar with the South Dakota legislative procedure, keeping track of bills and such. There were a number of bills in this last session that were introduced as they relate to planning and zoning, and as most legislative sessions go, several of them were killed very quickly. So there's very few that we have to talk about today that actually passed in the planning and zoning arena. The first bill, very minor, is a revision to the appeals process under 11.217.3. This just adds a section, approval of conditional use requests requires the affirmative majority vote of the members of the approving authority who are present and voting. Just makes the language a little bit more clear. Next, special permitted uses. Again, very minor changes, but important legal language instead of saying certain special permitted uses.
Did you have any problems with any of these changes?
Not at all.
Okay.
This also deals with that special permitted uses arena, the enforceability of that. This relates to our zoning ordinances. I don't believe this causes any issues with ours, but I will triple check myself. As I understand it, this doesn't change anything for us. Senate Bill 41 was an appropriation bill. This gave some funds to the South Dakota Housing Infrastructure Funds. This relates to Pennington County. As you can see, the distribution. Grants available with monies must be delegated as follows: 30% for housing infrastructure municipalities having a population of 50,000 or more. That's us. The authority shall distribute monies from South Dakota Housing Infrastructure Infrastructure Fund as follows: 30% for housing infrastructure in municipalities having a population of 50,000 or more. Again, that's us. The rest goes to other areas of the state, more rural areas. Lastly, and this is perhaps the sexiest piece of legislation you can find, is new law regarding the use of acceptable refrigerant. This was under the zoning planning piece in the legislative website.
We didn't have anything on the new refrigerant. previous to this, or?
Not to my knowledge. This is brand new information. It obviously cites to United States regulation and law as to what is acceptable refrigerant.
The only reason I asked that is I thought they'd had the law previously about discharge and so forth and the type of refrigerant.
I will check, but that might already be in that chapter 1110.
Yeah.
This is just an addition to that chapter as to the use of acceptable refrigerant.
Okay.
So this makes us, we have to be under the code then,
Correct.
the US code, so we have to be in compliance based on this now.
Yep, the use of refrigerant designated as acceptable in that particular section. Are there any other questions? Well, that's all I have as far as the legislative update goes for planning and zoning matters. And we'll move on to our next topic. So for this presentation, I wanted to do a sort of joint effort between myself, the planning department, because while there are obvious legal things to discuss as it relates to county drainage and the plans and things that we need to look at, consider, and possibly implement, the issues with county drainage are not necessarily legal. They are things that we see frequently, as the commissioners are very well aware, and things that the planning department sees. So I would invite Brittany Molitor and Jason Tennyson to discuss what the issues are here in Pennington County before we get into the fun legal stuff.
Okay.
And Joe's here too.
All right, Brittany Molitor, Planning Director. This is, I know, been on our radar for quite a while. We had a joint drainage commission with the city of Rapid City and Box Elder, and there just hasn't been a lot of movement on it. There's significant development in the 3 mile that's actually outside of the drainage basins. So they're going east of Reservoir Road. So there's a lot of concern in those areas with the drainage and the oversight in that, because there is no drainage commission, there's no drainage oversight. Our comments about those about those developments and, drainage studies being done, they're taking a very small approach at looking at it versus a holistic approach to it. The other issue we have is we actually just had a complaint yesterday call from the second bullet point of there's a development north of the county, and that development is causing significant damage to a property of a county resident because of the drainage that's coming off the lots.
From a development?
Pardon?
The drainage is coming off because of a development?
Yes, it's up off of Homestead. It's like Chet Street, and then it's south of Homestead, east of Elkvale. There's that new housing development. It's north of like Sweetbriar Street, Avenue A. It's in that area. So we just received a complaint yesterday about that development now is causing drainage into those homes that are along Sweetbriar, which are in the county. We did have a similar instance on Avenue A where it drained onto the right-of-way in the county, which our right-of-ways aren't built to take those kinds of drainages. So we have a lot of issues, and Joe can speak to some of those that our system isn't set up to take those, and there's a very small snapshot approach on it. And, one of the biggest things is some of the exceptions being granted by the city. There's a lot of concern from our citizens because they don't have any voice or any say in these exceptions being granted because they have not given notice to that. So those are some of the big ones for us. I don't know, Joe, if you have any other
So
things to
just a
add.
question, when you say the city, didn't the city start requiring retention ponds on some of their, and that's not, those aren't working, so it's still creating, I'm just trying to see from their side, did they have something in place like the retention ponds that they required? Or
Even that you have detention ponds, you'll have them, but what happens is the
They'll-
amount of water that goes through the system still increases.
Okay,
So
I
you
just-
may have the same amount of water, but the duration of it is quite a bit longer,
Okay.
which, and it still has to go somewhere. I mean,
Yes.
there's still more water irregardless of whether that detention, it's just how it's metered out.
I just wanted to ask that because I think some council members think, oh, we're doing the retention ponds, but I don't think they're seeing the big picture like we do. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
I don't think they're looking, excuse me, Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Superintendent. I don't think they're looking at the big picture,
No.
right? They're looking at a good example that's currently going through the city of Rapid City is the small home subdivision, in an acres or whatever it is up off a reservoir, right? They're not,
Tiny homes.
they're small homes because tiny homes are like 200, right? These are like 700 to 800. I don't know. I don't know what the technical term is, but anyways, there's 157 lots going in there, and we've requested the drainage study, right? That's at the top of the drainage. That's towards the top of the hill, right? So all that water is in an area that has not yet been studied by the county or the city. I don't think there's a drainage basin study there. So we're allowing development to go there. All that water's got to go somewhere, and it's going to go downhill, down to Apple Valley, right? Which is going to, it's all headed towards the creek. So I don't know that and I have no facts or anything like that, but it appears on the surface that the city is looking at minute issues and not looking at the big picture of things.
They
trying to
annex
keep.
that in, Joe?
What's that?
Did they annex that in?
I don't know
Did
for
they,
sure.
Brittany?
They are going to annex it in, yes.
So that's gonna,
So then we're taking out of the equation, right? But they're still going to drain on to Bridge Street and our system. All that drainage is still going to be in the county.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rusk.
So Brittany, if I understand it, drainage from the city, so these are developments in the city that are draining onto county property.
So the complaint that we received yesterday was along this street, and the development is here. This is the line between the city and the county. So these are county residents. This is city development.
So when this happens, are we actually working with the folks from the city to see if there's a solution that the county and the city can come to together?
So the last time that we had this, an instance, it was, what, Avenue A here, right here? There's a detention facility here. There wasn't much resolve with it.
Nope.
Between our staff and the city staff with it.
You know,
because
we've had meetings where, I think just last week, we met with the mayor of Rapid City, and how can the county and the city interact more together, and we got a different administration in the city, so maybe, I think we got another meeting set up in 3 months, but would this be, I think this would be a good time that we could sit down and say, how can we solve this problem?
Right, and we did have that on the Drainage Commission, and they wanted to basically withdraw from it. And this is a lot of the drainage issues where,
But when they withdraw, is that Vicky that withdraws, or Dale Tech, or do we get the mayor involved?
That's elected officials. Lance Lehman was there. What other councilman was there?
Greg Stroman is on it, but
Was
he
there.
wasn't there.
Those are elected officials from the city that were on that drainage commission. They still are, right? Technically, I don't know. Alexa can speak to all that stuff, but there's this is specific to drainage, but there's a lot of other issues. There's another possible drainage issue just right to the east here and all of this development, right? The county wasn't even routed the information on this until after the fact. There's a possible 500 apartment complex going to go in here, a Safeway, which brings on drainage issues, traffic issues, all sorts of different things, right? So keeping this specific to drainage, I think, when Gary was chair, Brittany and I sat in on several county city meetings with the mayor and Dale Tech and tried to talk about these issues, but there's just been no resolve, right? The city I don't know.
Well, it's
The
not the
answer
mayor,
is-
it's the elected officials giving exceptions. And when they give those exceptions, without sounding mean, they don't know the consequences to their actions. They're not trying to be mean. We did it when we were in the city. I was one of them because you didn't understand the consequences to your actions to the county and what that meant. So they're not doing it to be facetious. Most of it's just they don't know infrastructure. So I'm not trying to be mean to the elected officials either. And then you have to have cooperation through the planning department, which Vicky's usually pretty good. Dale's a little bit more ornery, but
Well, let me throw this at Brittany, could you share a little bit? You're doing some research on a shared planning commission.
We are, and looking at doing that, because we have concerns, like Joe said, there's several of these developments that we didn't get routed on because they were outside. This is one of them. This one we did have concerns with. They decided to annex it, but still all of the traffic is going to go down a county road. Or they're going to use, I think what they said was Homestead, which Homestead, you put traffic on it, you have, the school and everything like that through here. So there's just some, concerns with some of, even the ones that are done in the city, that the traffic and the drainage are going into the county.
I just wanted to bring that up so the commission would know that you're working on something that you could present to us to be able to present an option to the city if it's available. I mean, that's one way to try to work together.
how do you vote on it?
What's that? Yeah, we have.
I remember talking to Brittany, how would you vote on it? Because if we voted, then it wouldn't go to either the city or the county.
So they have similar
Commissioner.
ones, East River, they have representatives, there's 3 or 4 planning commissioners from the city, 3 or 4 planning commissioners from the county, and then they make those, there's like a joint jurisdictional, decision.
Is it a final decision or is it just a recommended decision? And who do they go to, the city and the county both for? Or is it just like a CUP and it's,
I believe it's
Fine.
like a CUP and that's where it goes.
makes sense?
Mr. Chair.
But, sorry, one the problem that we have in the valley though is you have a whole separate entity involved with Rapid Valley Sanitary District that's different, in addition to the city and the county, where they're your infrastructure provider for water and sewer, so having, in these other instances, you may have the city being the provider where we don't have that, so that's a kind of a level of complication that's different because it's another legal entity that's involved now with development and directing development because they ultimately provide the infrastructure. If they don't provide it or it's, then, they kind of determine that as well.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lester.
I just have a question. So if the city is causing a problem into the county, there's no recourse for that?
My understanding is once it comes into the county, it's our responsibility to.
And Brittany, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a memorandum of understanding between the city and the county as far as, say, the county is going to allow a development north of where the city's annexed up there on Reservoir, a development similar to what they have there. If we're going to dump water onto the city, we have the due diligence to say, hey, city, this is what we're doing, and the city vice versa is what I understand that memorandum
There is an
is.
MOU for stormwater.
So
They don't have to do the same to us. Is that what you're saying?
it's supposed to be vice versa.
Yeah.
So what happens if they're not doing that?
You could do a memorandum of understanding of letting them annex in all of or Rapid Valley, and all this commission would be okay with that, and then send that to the city.
Well, the MOU.
Since they are developing around it and not wanting to annex in it, maybe we just say until you decide to annex parts of Rapid Valley or annex Rapid Valley, you're causing us a lot of issues, not with just drainage, guys, because they're picking pieces and parts. And at this point, like I said, they need to annex it in. Otherwise, they're just going to keep causing us issues. And I don't mean that in a facetious way either. It makes sense. Annex the 11,000 people in right next to you.
Well, and Travis can probably speak to it better than I can, but I'm a resident of Rapid Valley, and you know we get all of the regulation of the city of Rapid City because of their 3 mile platting jurisdiction. If you want to go, you know, buy a piece of property and subdivide it and build a house or whatever, you have to go through the city of Rapid City, but you don't have any representation there, right? I mean, that's largely the issue. You don't get the representation, as Brittany said earlier. You don't have the representation to go to the city. You don't get noticed. You don't get any of the information until it's too late. You know, just like Murphy Ranch with the apartments and all the stuff that was going on there, right? That was all platting done. The zoning was done through us, but the platting was done through the city. So,
Well, don't we have a rule, or we're going to make a rule that if you wanted to plat in the county, that you had to annex it in? And maybe that needs to be a rule, and if it's legal, maybe it should be this board's desire to tell them if you're going to plat it and do what you're doing, because we don't have the infrastructure to take care of all the development you guys are doing around us, that it should be taking place. If you want to do something with some rules and regulations, that makes sense.
That might have to be a legislative action, I'm not sure, but I do think as a commission, we should encourage, you know, either A, some research to figure out, does it have to be legislative or can we do it? But two, if it has to be legislative, if we're all agreeing of that, I think we're the only county municipality that's having this issue. I'm not aware of any others that are having this particular issue. And I would like to see, if you're going to exercise the planning jurisdiction, that you have to annex it within the next 3 years of, you know.
2 years.
Or 2 years. I'm negotiable. A year would probably be fine to me. But let's move forward so they can't keep controlling, but not take over the area that they're controlling that's causing us problem.
Yeah, because they're costing us millions of dollars.
Mr. Drews.
So there's been some initial discussions. In fact, it came up at the Rapid City meeting that the mayor held of some sort of a joint planning function between Box Elder, Rapid City, Pennington County, and at least northern Meade County, because of the development that's taking place there. This sounds like it fits right in on that. But, and I think the idea behind that probably was to get together and maybe ask, like the Black Hills Council of Governments, to, if they would consider serving in this capacity, and this could include not only planning but drainage and so forth for the future. And maybe this is the time that we need to really start pushing for something like that, of a joint planning adventure for all of these.
Anything to do with infrastructure, Gary, would make, like roads, drainage, sewer, all that kind of stuff would make sense.
yeah, I think, you know, Rapid Valley's been going on since, from my understanding, from the '60s, or is kind of when it all started. You know, back then it was a long ways from town, right? You didn't have all the development, but as it's gotten bigger, I mean, if it's gone on since the '60s, it's going to take some time to get it fixed.
Yeah.
So I think the time is now to start either chasing legislation. You know, I think the problem with the legislation is it just a city of Rapid City, Pennington County issue? The legislators probably aren't going to want to hear it.
Well,
if it's bigger than City of Rapid City, Pennington County, it's probably going to look at. That's just what I've heard from our association of highway superintendents. Is, you know, from my understanding, I think we are the only city county issue. Minnehaha, City of Sioux Falls work pretty well together. So I think it's going to be up to us and the City of Rapid City to play nice together and figure it out.
well, I think that's more feasible of what was discussed at that meeting, because it's not to say that the city has tried to annex Rapid Valley way back in the 70s, and it was voted down. And when me and you were on the council, we started discussions and having meetings on it back then, and it just kind of dwindled away at that point in
It took
time.
a couple of them, but not
So
much.
I would love to force somebody to annex something in, but it comes down to the will. And I think the route that Gary talked about, I think the mayor was receptive to that, but I don't think with this new administration, annexation's a big priority.
So just a thought, Lloyd. So if you didn't rezone it, if you didn't do what the county's supposed to do to make that land so they can build on it until they annex it in. Is that legal, Brittany?
Well,
Or
currently, right now, our future
That's-
land use is, allows the more dense development. I think these areas around here are actually low-density residential. It would force them to annex it if we didn't rezone it.
That's what I'm saying.
As long as we had a reason not to rezone it, i.e. that the infrastructure isn't in place. There's a traffic study that shows that our roads can't. I mean, those are all things you'd have to have a reason to not annex it, other than just
That's what I'm
not wanting
saying, is
to.
make it more, if you want to make something stringent that's going to affect Pennington County, is make some of those rezones having to have the infrastructure in place with no exceptions for some of that, because then you're going to start getting some build out that makes sense.
Well, and I think the problems that we're seeing is in the older parts of the valley, because we are seeing the drainage come down. So a lot of these older areas down here
Yeah.
that never used to see water, or that would see water, once those areas get saturated and that water's running for a long period of time, the road ditches and things are not built to
Yes.
handle these, and
It's coming from up north
correct.
and
I mean, it
west.
is.
That's why I'm saying, if they cannot, if they're not building big enough retention ponds to a certain extent that are metering it out slow enough for the southern end of Rapid Valley, it's only going to get worse.
Well, and I don't think it's just building that, because once those areas get saturated, it doesn't matter how long, because they're still going to run. It's this infrastructure in this older part needs work. I mean, there needs to be.
So that's where the Drainage Commission comes.
Correct. And there is, drainage studies that have recommendations. It's just that there hasn't been funding to be able to build some of these. I mean, there's studies, in these studies, these drainage basins, there's 3 or 4 different drainage basins just right here. And there's recommendations from engineers, and they've been recommending them for a long time. It's just that they haven't been put in.
No
The
funding.
development is continued, so the infrastructure that they're proposing is probably undersized already.
But if you're building up north and you're getting exceptions, you're building the same stuff that you have on the southern part. So you're not making a difference, and we're not doing anything different. If we're getting exceptions, all we're doing is having the same buildup with the same issues. That's what I'm saying. Something needs to change through the county. So they're affecting us. They're not affecting themselves from that. Again, what can we do as a commission to regulate that so the city understands we don't have the money and the capabilities to do some of the stuff that needs to be regulated through all their exceptions. I don't know what that is, you guys. You can do a planning or whatever, but just saying.
Okay. Yeah, I think we brought up some good subjects here.
Fire.
But right now, we're talking about current drainage and some options.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's kind of a twofold approach, I believe. I think it's the new development, and then it's, fixing some existing issues in the existing older development as well. I mean, both needs to be done. I mean, you have to try to put in something here,
Yeah.
because there's already issues. I mean,
But we talked about fees and stuff, but if it's mostly this area, right? If it's mostly this area that's having the main issue, and then we're going to, I'm not against fees and stuff sometimes, but if it's mainly Rapid Valley, are we gonna push that off to the whole county for the main issue, which is Rapid Valley and their infrastructure and their drainage?
well, and I think Alexa will go over that with you as far as the statutory requirements. You have to actually be in a delineated studied drainage basin. So it would have to be in these areas that are within those drainage basins that actually have a study. So it wouldn't be countywide, it would only be the ones that actually have drainage basin designation.
And we have
So
that.
those three drainage basins right now are Racetrack Draw, Unnamed Tributary, and County Heights.
Okay.
And currently, the county highway department maintains those. We get $60,000 from the building permit fees, right? That Brittany gives to us, and they retain the rest of it. To date, I think we spent about $30,000 on maintaining those drainage ditches. We've inherited the Hawthorne ditch. You know, when the Hawthorne Ditch Company gave up its rights to the city of Rapid City, all the Rapid Valley drainage is all tied into that Hawthorne ditch and the County Heights and the racetrack, and the unnamed tributary. So we took over maintaining that Hawthorne ditch. We went and mowed it this spring, weeded it, picked up all the trash, the debris, all that stuff that's in it. I would be surprised if it wasn't. I bet once a month we get a phone call in our office. Hey, can I fill in the Hawthorne ditch? Well, the answer is always no, because it's a vital part, and it's in. It may not seem like it. I've got a call, a couple months ago after one of these big rainstorms. Hey, I know why I can't fill in the Hawthorne ditch now, right? Because they see it after some of these big rains, and it's flowing full with all of the drainage. The drainage in Rapid Valley wasn't necessarily designed for the density that it currently is, right? There's a lot of, it probably should be curb and gutter and storm sewer, most of it, if not all of it, but unfortunately it's not. So to go put storm sewer and curb and gutter on all of it, you're talking tens of millions of dollars to go do that. So it's not really a question. So we've got to deal with what we've got, and making our ditches and our culverts work for what's there. And it starts with everything uphill, right? And everything uphill is the new development, which when they put in the new development, more streets, they're getting that water to those detention cells, and it's going out over a longer period of time, soaking into the water, into our ditches. And if they allow the detention cells not to go in, like we've seen in Murphy Ranch, they're playing a shell game with the detention cells of every plat. One seemed to disappear, and finally Sean in our office caught it, was like, hey, where'd this detention cell go or drainage lot that was on this plat? The city didn't even catch it, right? So there's some of that stuff going on, and if those detention ponds aren't going on, that means that water is getting downhill faster. It's getting the same amount of water, but it's going downhill faster, and it's getting to its final destination faster, which causes issues. So it all starts with the studies, and I don't know when the last one was done on County Heights and Racetrack Draw. And even the unnamed tributary. I think the racetrack draw was the one that was done most recent by Ferber,
Yep,
or Abbott, I should say.
They're working on that right now, and it's up for comment.
So that's where a lot of this starts. And I guess I come to you with, I'd had our accountant look and see what we had in our drainage reserves as of January of 2023. We have about $300,000 in there to kickstart something, whether we want to get an RFP out. But we need to resolve the drainage issue, the drainage commission thing first, figure out what we want to do there.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
Sounds to me like we should delineate the issues that we have in writing so that we have a clear understanding of it. And then approach Box Elder, Rapid City, Meade County, and see if we can't come to some kind of a conclusion as to doing the work, finding somebody that will do the work on our behalf to come up with recommendations as to how we move forward on this. Obviously, the grandiose plan is probably not going to fit anybody's budgets, and so we have to figure out then what can work for the budgets. What are things that the city can do to help the county, vice versa, Box Elder, et cetera, so forth. We know that development's going to take place in all these areas, and so the problem is just going to disappear. So either we work together and try to resolve it, or we're going to stand alone, and we're probably not going to come to any real good resolve on these issues.
So I agree. But I think what you're looking for right now is some information on some of these options. Our existing stuff that we have already we don't have the funding to even fix what we have right now. And so you're probably looking at some different options.
And I think that's what Alexa's going to go over with you, and to Gary's point, I think, would it be beneficial to have one of the 4 or 5 engineers that are very fluent in the drainage in the area be I guess a center point for some of those conversations, to take some of those notes down? Would it be beneficial for the county to have somebody in those meetings taking down the notes and kind of getting with all collaborating, instead of everybody's going to be vying for their own piece? Maybe have somebody as non-biased, I guess, so to speak.
I guess we'll
Okay.
let Alexa kind of go over some of the statutory.
So under the law, excuse me, there are a number of different actions that can go from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other, which is you do absolutely nothing, you're allowed to do that under the law. You have an extensive drainage plan, ordinance, commission, you're absolutely allowed to do that. And even under that, you have options there. You can have what we currently do, which is a joint drainage commission. That is a body that exists, and that is as much as I know about it. As far as I know, little has been done on the Joint Drainage Commission. They do meet as required by statute, which is every 6 months, but that, as far as I know, is all they have done. We have not resolved any issues on the Joint Drainage Commission. You can also have a county drainage commission, and I can get into the nitty gritty about how we would do that. And lastly, another option is for you as a board of commissioners to take on drainage issues as a drainage commission, essentially. So we can run the whole gambit of what we want to do. It sounds like, based on the conversations that I've been hearing on the dais, that we're interested in a joint drainage commission, maybe just not as it stands. Is that?
Chair,
Ms. Hancock.
I don't think the other entities are interested in doing that. Just from listening to them, I'm the chair of that. I think you're going to be a lot better off if you do a county drainage and then move from there, what those options might be.
And Commissioner Hadcock, that's my understanding as well, is that the city of Rapid City has expressed their disinterest in participating in the Joint Drainage Commission. The city of Box Elder has done the same, and I believe they've both done that in writing. I mean, it's still an option we can certainly discuss, explore, just trying to let you know what we have on the gambit here.
I'll follow up on what, I agree with that. I think what we need to probably look at is a county drainage commission. And I think just like the city has drainage fee, we may have to get some funding to do that. But I think on the third part of that leg would probably be, as what Mr. Drew had talked about, the big picture, trying to get them all to collaborate into having that one unbiased person. And that may take some funds from the county, from that drainage that we can raise to get that person to do it unbiased from everything. That would be the third leg. But I think the first part is to accept that we're not going to have a joint drainage commission because it just, we attempted it. I don't think information was conveyed well enough out to the surrounding bodies, but I think an unbiased body would work better.
Chair is,
Mr. Drew is next in line.
sorry.
So Alexis, if we as a county establish a drainage commission and set these parameters, do we have authority over Box Elder and Rapid City as far as what they can do within the county then, as far as drainage, unless it meets our satisfaction?
If you give me just a moment, I believe there is a statute.
There's. Oops. Chair, while she's looking that up, can I say something?
Yeah.
So it's come to the point, guys, and this is with the Drainage Commission, and that's probably why Rapid City doesn't want to participate. I don't know about Box Elder, but they're affecting us in a way that it might go past, it might go to court on some of these issues, guys. Because you cannot, whether you're Lloyd LaCroix affecting Debbie Hadcock on her property or a city affecting the county on their property, they are causing us some major issues up north. And I'm not trying to, people think I'm trying to beat somebody up. I like the city. I like a lot of the city council people, and the mayor's very nice. It's the point that if the engineers, even when we met before, one of them said we were being political. When the drainage areas in Copperfield drained into Rapid Valley, there were some huge issues. So it's been going on for a while where Rapid City is affecting Pennington County in a way that's causing us some major issues for our constituents in Rapid Valley. How we move forward, and that's why I'm saying this, how we move forward in a positive way, the best thing we could have done is kept the joint commission, but they didn't want to participate. So I like Solution, and I like them to participate, and I like Box out there because I like team. Because then you start affecting, and we help them, they help us, and we make a really good issue with our development moving forward. But unfortunately, it's getting worse. It's not getting better because of the development that's up north and going, now they're just going around us. So maybe there's a chair could go talk to the mayor and say, we got some critical issues with our drainage area. We're trying to figure out what we should do with our drainage team. Should we do the drainage commission? Doesn't sound like you guys want to be in participation. Maybe have a talk with them, Lloyd, before we dissolve it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Try to find that solution first and then move forward on, okay, you're not getting any answers. They're not caring what happens next. Then we know to move forward with the next step. But there's a new mayor in town, and he's very nice, and hopefully he'll listen to some of our issues because they're not just kind of issues; they're critical areas of drainage that are costing thousands of dollars that we need to fix, and that's a lot of money for Pennington County. And 300,000 of Joe's is going to go
Nowhere.
to nowhere.
Okay. Did you guys find it? Yeah, we could definitely do that,
If you
Deb.
would, Lloyd.
Instead of dissolving it here today, this is just giving us some options. You could research the commission one, but we could still make the attempt to shake hands on the other side.
Reach out. Yep.
And if that doesn't work, come back. We have this researched and looked up.
Absolutely. And I have already started a draft to dissolve the Joint Drainage Commission. So if that's, something that we explore, something that we don't come to a solution on with the city of Rapid City and Box Elder, we can quickly move forward on dissolving that Drainage Commission and moving forward on whatever the board wishes to do. But to your question, Commissioner Drews, yes, the board would have authority. The statute is 46A 10A 28. And I'll just read it for the record here. If a board has adopted a drainage plan or any part, adjunct, amendment, or addition thereto, no rehabilitation of existing drainage or construction of new drainage, whether publicly or privately owned, if covered by the adopted plan, may be undertaken or authorized in the county until the location and extent thereof has been submitted to and approved by the board or commission, if established. In case of disapproval by a commission, it shall communicate its reasons in writing to the board. At a hearing to review the decision by a majority vote of the board members elect, a board may overrule all or any portion of a disapproval or any erroneous approval which is contrary to the adopted plan. So yes, you would have that authority under either the County Drainage Commission or if the board decides to, reach its arms around it entirely. Obviously, at the end of the day, it is whether the board approves or disapproves any new or existing drainage.
Mr. Drews.
So just to follow up on that, so what we'd have to do then is notify all the adjoining entities or Rapid City, Box Elder, Meade County, et cetera, that we have now put this into place. And so that they need to give us advance notification, anything that they're going to do that's going to impact the drainage that comes or within or comes into Pennington County. And at that point, before development starts proceeding, we'd have to take some sort of action at that point in time then.
Correct. And the legwork that we would need to do to make sure that that occurs, and that those parties are notified that they are able to bring that to the commission or the board, is to establish what the statutes call controls. There are a number of options that we can look at as far as controls. Again, the statutory scheme is very, very broad, but one of the controls that we can do is an ordinance. Something that we've certainly discussed, and I believe has been discussed today, is a drainage plan. And according to that statute, if new drainage construction or existing drainage construction is proposed and is in non-compliance with the county's drainage ordinance or plan, the commission and the board can say no.
Okay.
But again, that requires some legwork on our end here. Is, if we decide and we reach out and efforts fail to revive the Joint Drainage Commission, not only would we have to form the County Drainage Commission after we dissolve it, which does take some effort. After that is done, we would need to start working on an ordinance and a drainage plan.
So Alexa, would it be possible to put that in writing, something like that, so we could review that? You know what I'm saying? Because this meeting is great, and this is great information, but I think we're going to lose some of the details as time goes by.
Sure.
Because there's going to be time that goes by before we meet with the mayor, but what I'd like to do is have something within that writing to be able to present to him so he knows our options.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? That if we can stay joint, if not, this is the route we may be going, and you may not like it.
Yep, I can put that in writing, and I can
Okay.
get that to you probably in the next
Sure.
2 weeks.
Mr. Drews?
I think it is a big hammer, and I would say that none of those entities are going to like it.
No.
And so but I think if you have that sort of in your hip pocket, as that's the potential that we have to go to,
Yeah.
I would think we'd get a whole lot more cooperation up front rather than having to go to the extreme.
Instead of kicking it down the road to next meeting, and pretty soon you forget. I think we got some, if you could do that, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. I just wanted to give the commission something to chew on today and start talking about our options, just even so I have a better idea of where the board is leaning, so I can focus my research on one particular area, because, again, I sound like a broken record here, but this statutory scheme is so broad. Our options are vast. So if I have a clearer understanding of what you're thinking, what you're wanting, I can definitely narrow my research. And like I said, Chair, I can get that memorandum to you probably in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Everybody in agreement with that?
Right.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Alexis, one further question. So, for instance, the development that's happening in Meade County right now, this providing drainage in the Pennington County, impacting or could impact residents in Pennington County. Does that come to a civil? Is that where that ends up? Do those residents, would they have to go after, if the county chooses to do nothing? Is that a civil case on their part then, to the developer or to the development?
I would have to do some further research on the liability of the county if we do nothing. But my understanding is you're correct, that would be a civil issue between those residents and the developer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
I've kind of gone through my PowerPoint. Essentially, just speaking with you, and that's usually my preferred method of presenting anyway. I just wanted to give you some bullet points for the packet. But yes, I will get you a memorandum in the next 2 weeks to go over options, and I hope this did give you something to chew on. I believe our next issue is other items. Stormwater utility.
And this is just another option on top of this, and I believe Joe and I were just discussing this as far as the stormwater utility fee, and I'll have Alexa confirm. But because we have drainage basins that are delineated within the Rapid Valley area, we have the unnamed tributary, the racetrack, and the county heights drainage that Rapid City has adopted. I think that if we formally adopt those drainage plans, it would give us the ability to collect a stormwater utility fee within those drainage basins. And currently, right now, I did a GIS, there's about 3,100 properties that would fall under those three basins where a utility fee could possibly be collected. I know the city of Rapid City is already collecting a stormwater utility fee in those basins in their city limits. So you could have someone across the street from another that they're paying a stormwater utility fee in the city, but in the county they are not. And that's what the city uses for their, maintenance and construction of infrastructure.
Can you charge the city a stormwater, because they're affecting our contributaries?
But it's based on, they do different, it's a calculation that the city does based on impervious area. So the more impervious area you have on your lot, the higher your utility fee. Is essentially how it works.
I get Deb saying.
Yeah, I know.
But my thought process on this is we're behind the eight ball on the drainage and we don't have it, a small fee to try to fix what we have. And I think my personal belief is that we need to move forward with the drainage fee. I don't know what the rest of the commissioner.
I think so too. The thought with, also you need to start thinking about, and since I've been here, we've been selling off a lot of drainage lots. We need to start looking at drainage lots and things that are giving people that might be areas that we probably should not build, but retain water in and different things through the county. So that might be future infrastructure areas that I know the city is an 8-foot setback off of drainage areas, but just saying.
I think the drainage lots that you're speaking of here in recent past are all right in the middle of the city of Rapid City. And, the county just had the pleasure of maintaining them, right, Lloyd?
Yep,
for whatever reason, they should be the city of Rapid City drainage lots, but however that all worked out, it ended up in the county's name somehow. We went and cleaned it up, and I believe the city has taken it. I don't know for sure, but
Not just those, but we've let people buy drainage lots and stuff in the county
Yeah.
to add to their lots, and then they built on them, so.
yeah, I can't think of anything in my tenure here, but we definitely try and take a look at those things and make sure that drainage is adequately done. So,
Well, it sounds to me the commission's positive outlook on stormwater utility fee.
Okay.
So move forward on that.
So to have our office and Joe's office and the state's attorney's office look at how to go about actually getting that on the books. Okay,
I think you got
bring
that.
that forward.
Is there anything else? Any last minute speeches? All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody. I think we've got some direction. I think we learned that if we're ever going to bring up any type of mining, we do a separate meeting. If we want to have a constructive planning commission meeting, so we learned that today. So I think you got some directions with that. Is there any public comment? See none? I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So, Mr. Chair,
Oh,
just
Mr. Jones.
one final comment. I don't want the suggestion of some joint planning among the various entities to be thought of as only part of the drainage. Drainage can be eliminated from that completely. I think there still needs to be some joint planning amongst all of these entities moving forward. And at this point in time, I don't see that that's really happening. And so I would suggest that we take a serious look at whether or not the council of local governments would be interested in pursuing that if all the entities would get on board and share the cost of doing something like that.
Okay, that was my understanding from our our meeting, that we were still gonna move forward with that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
so I believe we have our quarterly meeting next week, Black Hills Council of Local Governments. So if there's something that we want to discuss at that meeting relative to what Gary just said, that might be a time to do it.
I think so. We could do that. I think we need, I'll get with staff and we can draft something. I think we need something in writing to present instead of just talking about it. And then we can present it to the entities, because we're just gonna have representatives from the city there, which I think that proposal has to go to the mayors too, directly, so. But I think.
I think the first thing, though, you need to do is pursue to see if Jennifer is interested in entertaining such a thing.
Exactly. Okay. Got a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Drews, second by Hadcock. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.